If you aren't focused on being visible in AI based searches, you're missing the fastest growing audience and missing out on some big opportunities to win new customers. But how do you get a comprehensive view of what these AI based searches are turning up and where you fit in them? Welcome to One Amazing Thing About Scrunch. Today we're talking with Devin Stevens, Head of Solutions Engineering at Scrunch, and he's going to be sharing their amazing platform with us today. Devin, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Greg. It's great to be here.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing this in action in a second here. But before we do, why don't you give a little background on yourself and your role at Scrunch?
Yeah, obviously, I've been in the SaaS world for many years and helping brands with social media, websites, and now the buzz is AI. So my team, from first interest from anybody on what the tool can do, how we use it, all the way through implementation and deployment. So my team is kind of a guide through that journey on making sure things get set up right.
Love it, love it. So let's talk a little bit before you share. What are we going to look at today? Who's the audience, and why is it important to them?
Yeah. Well, what I want to talk about today is what we call our agent experience platform. And you've probably seen it about a week ago. There was a Forbes article, and we've had this dead internet theory out here for a long time, but now we're seeing the data that the main visitors of websites are now bots and agents.
Yeah.
And so, what unfortunately we've spent years and even decades building in this really rich, high experience browser based internet, it doesn't work for them anymore. And so we are set out and we're helping brands make, a different version of the website and make it be more friendly for those AI agents.
Yeah, love it. Well, yeah, let's take a look. Why don't you share your screen?
So, Greg, kind of talking you through this a little bit, one of the first things is really starting to understand, who's visiting the website. So, again, a lot of that data and really seeing, the different types of bots. So, as we start, what you're looking at here is actually our website. And so, really starting to understand when a bot comes, what's it looking for? What can it do? And there's a lot of nuance as we start thinking about these different types of bots in terms of, those classic indexer bots that we've been seeing for years as we think about, Google and Bing and Brave building those indexes. Also, a lot of training bots out there as we think about people who are really reading your content, starting to, bring it into those models so that they can answer questions, quickly. And then where we see the biggest impact, and we focus a lot with the big companies today, is these retrieval bots.
Hmm.
So the idea that retrieval bot is someone sitting at a keyboard, they're on their phone, they're asking a question, and that bot is coming to your website to try to see if you're a part of the answer. So we really start to break that down and make sense of, who is it? What are they coming for? And how do they like to read information? So again, really starting to understand how the internet has shifted, and not everybody's a human on a Chrome or a web browser anymore.
Right, right. I think that's the classic misunderstanding is that, again, we've been doing SEO I've been doing SEO for too longer than I care to mention, but there's just a fundamental difference, right, in how bots and there's been search index bots for decades at this point, to your point. But being able to look at this and see it, how does this help people make substantive changes to their sites and their content to be able to be indexed better and be retrieved better?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so, there's a lot of different ways to look at it, but, even coming down to the basics here, let me show you a little bit. So, the first part is really understanding, is my website, being visited? So then as we think about those visits, really understanding, hey, when that bot comes, it doesn't have that browser. It's getting that full experience. It's not going to see that video load,
Right.
in a player. So, putting these side by side and starting to say, is my website even available? Is the information there? Can it be read? And then again, really just starting to understand even the access, firewall controls, robots.txt files, and how they may be interfering or helping as we think about those. So, bringing that back even one level and then saying, hey, after a bot comes and visits my website, what is it doing with the information? Is that helping me? Did it find what it needs? And am I showing up in different citations and different answers? So really starting to understand, hey, that ChatGPT retrieval bot came, visited my page, has my content, and then starting to roll that into, hey, now it's using me in an answer because it can understand that information. not only is it using me in an answer, but hopefully it's giving me a link and a citation so that when I have a prospect, a consumer, someone who's interested in learning more, they're one click away. Then they're coming onto my website in what we call that AI referral. So again, the whole marketing funnel has changed. It's very, very different as we think about qualifying visitors. And there's not this click, 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 click across my website that we all loved and spent years understanding. Now that whole conversation is out of my eyesight. The LLM and the user are interacting, and by the time I get that user, the good news is when they do come to my website, the intent is way higher. We
Mm,
know they've done a lot of that explore. We can move them far more quickly, into those calls to action or the next stage that we're looking for. Now, the problem is as you start building these bot friendly websites, what happens is you have to start to cater to one visitor over the other.
mm.
As you start to make a bot friendly website and you start to strip down that information, it's not as fun for you and I to browse the internet. The videos are gone, it's not as rich. We don't see as much JavaScript. So really starting to get, a detailed understanding of that. And then ultimately what we do at Scrunch is we take all that information and we actually scrunch the page. So we actually create an alternate version of every page on the website. So what you're seeing on the screen here on the left side is what we call the human view. This is my origin. This is my website that I've been building. It's SEO optimized, and I've been doing this for years. And a lot of brands have much bigger pages than this, but this one has 230,000 tokens. So when those retrieval bots come and visit that page, they're often, spending about 10,000 tokens to understand what's on it.
Mm.
So as we see how they parse this page as they go through, the likelihood of them to pull the information, the story, the value statements that I want off of this page, it's very small.
Mm.
It's going to fight through a lot of this noise, navigation, headers, and things that it doesn't need, and it won't read anyway. Now, on the right side, we have that scrunched version of the page. If you ever were wondering where the name came
Yeah,
from,
I did. So yeah, that's great.
so yeah, we've scrunched that down. Now, what's really cool is on this left and this right side here, we actually have the same amount of usable content. So the idea being is instead of fighting through the noise, instead of trying to figure out, things that are meant for a browser and a human, the bot comes to this page and they get very, very clear,
Mm,
very structured information without any of that extra effort. We've got clear title and descriptions here. We've got H1 headers, H2, and we're writing at a reading level that these bots prefer. We're watching different sentence structures and word count. And so what's really exciting is you don't have to go and rip apart everything you've done for years as a marketer. You don't have to go to your web development team and say, hey, we've got to start over. What we're doing at Scrunch is we're making this happen very, very quickly. We're not interfering with anything that's already working on those websites and in those online experiences, but we're able to create that informational layer immediately, and really start to go lift, mentions how often that brand gets included because the LLMs know more about you. It also drives into citations because they see information, they trust this URL, and then the LLM is far more likely to bring that user back because it had a great shopping experience and it knew exactly what was on that page, or it explained your value prop and walked through all the details, or highlighted why your customer service and opening a checking account at your bank is the next best option. So, really excited to have done this with a number of huge brands. And I'll tell you, we got a lot more work to do with making the internet a little bit easier for AI and scrunching the websites as we go.
that's great. Great to see this. And couple questions as we wrap up here. Then, how much I saw some of this in the interface itself, but how much because this is a relatively new thing. There's lots of people that know a lot about SEO and kind of the old school way of doing things. How much of this is also educational, right? For those that are just kind of wrapping their heads around it.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will say a lot of the discussions and, Greg, I'm fortunate enough, I probably talk to anywhere from 10 to 15 different companies a week about
Yeah.
this. So,
Yeah.
a lot of it is just helping people understand. And, one of the things that I will tell you is we're still early in this trend, and these models are changing, and there's hundreds of engineers that are updating and making these tools work differently every single day. So
Yeah.
one of the things that we do, and kind of tied into making sure that these work, and that brands don't have to know this stuff, is we work really hard to invest heavily in our research. So really kind of taking a data science lens to how these models are functioning, what they're doing differently, how they read or don't read certain table structures. So
Yeah.
it is a lot of education, and we're excited to be helping and giving that information and collaborating with the brands, and really showing the performance improvements.
Yeah, love it, love it. Well, Devin, thanks so much for joining and showing this off. Definitely, I'm sure lots more to come. We're still early days in this whole space, right? So it's there's probably thankfully there's platforms like this that so people don't have to know everything that changes the next 24 hours or whatever. But yeah, if people want to learn more about Scrunch, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, definitely come to our website. A lot of information on there. Definitely ways to get in contact with us. We've had a little bit of press recently and some exciting news in terms of
Yeah,
now we're a Sitecore company, which is extremely exciting. So in
yeah,
terms of
congrats.
roadmap, thank you, and everything we're doing, it's how do we do more? How do we create more features? How do we do even more to help these companies? So we've got some huge releases coming out at the end of the month. We'll be excited to share with the world.
Love it. Love it. Look forward to seeing it. Well, again, I'd like to thank Devin Stevens, Head of Solutions Engineering at Scrunch, for joining the show. You can learn more about Devin and Scrunch by following the links in the show notes.